Top of the agenda, Melbourne has made a winless start to the season and Saturday seemed particularly sobering on their home deck, beaten by an interloper with high aspirations. They did give the feeling of a team that has been left behind.
What are the things you can control in the game? One of the things you can control is your intensity in contest and pressure, and that's where most teams have started on their fight back.
You get angry?
Absolutely you do.
Goes for home, there's another one.
They've been smashed around clearance today, absolutely smashed.
Well, it's really an annihilation now.
They said after last week, judge us on next week. Yep. The response, they talked about the response. Well, the response was another 10-goal loss to the Suns, who don't win away from home.
And we acknowledge right now, where we sit right now, isn't where we want to be, and it's not to the level, and we've got to fix it.
It's no longer a midfield that has that fear factor.
I don't think you can have Oliver, Viney and Petrarca in the same centre bounce anymore going forward.
You could see, just the basics of the game weren't to the standard required.
If you get stuck hanging on to the past, you can waste years. We've got a new team coming in, and to be fair, this group aren't doing it. They're not getting it done anymore.
Right now, when I watch the game, our method's not right, so we need to fix that first and foremost. Thanks, guys.
It was the sum of all fears on Saturday afternoon. That's back-to-back 10-goal hidings from teams coming from the bottom six, and Friday night sends them down the highway to face Geelong. So, Garry Lyon, give me your overall on how you view Melbourne.
Pretty grim. It's a pretty grim start to the year. There's no question about that. I was trying to think about this in the best way possible. So, if football games are like movies, they're entertainment. So, you're going to watch a movie, then Melbourne are the Westerns of yesteryear, that were the most popular genre of movie. You go and watch Melbourne play and they'd beat you up in the middle and they'd get the ball inside their forward 50 and then set up behind the footy and you wouldn't be able to score. And Max was the sheriff and you had the best deputies in footy, in Viney, Petrarca and Oliver, and you had this posse and they won the shootout and they got the goal. What's happened now, the Hollywood Hawks have wandered along and said, Westerns are yesteryear. Yes. We don't go and watch the Westerns. You come on to watch action-packed with a little bit of comedy thrown in. And at the moment, the old demons are sitting there with their six-shooters going, well, what are we going to do? And then the next thing that happens is your strength gets taken away from you. So they're even losing the six-gun battle. And that's in the middle of the ground. So that's just the way I see it. I think the game is moving so quickly. And for whatever reason, well, we know the reason, all the strength that was once their one-wood, the most important thing, it's very similar to Carlton, is that contest and clearance and all that stuff which held them in such great stead, it's gone zoom past them. And now it's kicking and ball movement and all those things that you hear and might bore you. But they are 17th in the competition for scores from turnover this year. Only the West Coast are worst. So this is where the game's at. And this is where Melbourne, as you said earlier, been left behind. Last year and this year, scores from turnover 16th. Only Richmond and West Coast worst. They've taken 15th in the competition for marks inside 50. So when they do get in there, they can't mark the footy and get an easy goal. And as we said, they've scored really poorly. So the question now for Simon and the rest of the team is, are we going to try and stay with what has been our great strength and swim against the tide here? And the only promising thing is that that midfield group, I think it was Jack who said it, you can't have Viney, Petrarca and Oliver in your centre bounce.
Give me a starting lineup on Friday night.
On Friday it would be Gawn and it would be Pickett, Langford and one off Petrarca and so Pickett was the best midfielder for Melbourne through the whole of the summer, and he hasn't played for obvious reasons, but that's where the change has got to come from. And then you got Windsor and Langford, hopefully you got Lindsay who hurt his knee on the weekend. So it's not going to be a quick fix. I fear that the pain's going to be there for a little while, but there is a little bit of blue sky on the horizon. But I don't know whether they anticipate...
And that's in draft picks.
Yeah, and the kids that they've got.
Brought in.
So the McVie, who is not playing at the moment, and Rivers and Chandler are the older ones, but it's Pickett, Windsor, Langford and Lindsay. So they've invested in the draft. They haven't got a first pick next year. So they've taken the kids. So I don't know whether they anticipated the drop-off, and I'm not writing off the big gunslingers just yet. So Petrarca, Oliver and Viney will still have a say in proceedings. They just can't... They're not the stars in the movie anymore, Jared. Yeah. They need the support cast to come along with them, and they'll still have their moments. They'll still get the job done, but they have what is their strength is leaving them behind. And right now, and now that, you know,
the spiritual side of it. So I know this caught your eye. There's the
Yeah.
tactical side and then there's the
Yes.
spiritual side. This is the second week post-match where there's sort of been a bit of an eye-popping moment. And this was the idea that Max Gawn told the Age that they'd had their spirits broken by Gold Coast at the MCG.
Yeah, it was, and Max has not put a foot wrong for 7-8 years. His captaincy and leadership in the face of adversity has been unbelievable. I don't want my captain coming out and telling the footy world that we're a team who can be broken, whose spirit can be broken, least of all by a Gold Coast Suns team at the MCG who haven't won or very rarely win. So I didn't like this, and it's, you know, saying to the rest of the competition, hey, if we hang in here long enough or we serve it up hard enough, by their own admission, we can break their spirit. So the greatest thing about it all is that, you know, we get to see whether or not they can redeem themselves on Friday night in the biggest night of footy against a team where they've had the disaster down there, which led to the sacking of Dean Bailey way back, and they had the turning point, which led to Max Gawn becoming the player that he was.
Yeah.
That's the two ends of the spectrum. What are we going to get Friday night? And I don't want, you know, well, Max has put it on the leaders and everyone else, but right now they're in a deep hole and they've got to prove to the rest of the footy world that they can get their way out of it.
So I had the idea of just called that game and thought they are committed to each individual contest, but they're not connected.
No.
So and their whole summer has been about trying to reconnect with each other. So they're not fighting the war together.
No.
Now, how much of that is retrievable, only they will know. And if they were able to become cohesive, united, and sacrifice for each other again, what might that lead to? But the way they were on Saturday is their ball movement's awful, and I can't imagine that's what they're actually trying to do. And then they didn't stay connected to each other. You fight that fight, you fight that, I'll fight this fight, and get it completely overwhelmed.
And when your narrative over the summer's been about love, I mean, the whole of the media world's going to pick up on that, and now it becomes a bit of a millstone until you turn it around to show that it is, and pointing at each other and, you know, you get up, you pick him up, why didn't you pick him up, throw your hands in the air, as Max talks about. That just opens the door for the criticism that they absolutely deserve. So
it's a big coaching challenge, isn't it?
I think it's a coaching challenge as much as any. And Vossi's going to be here in a moment, and it's not dissimilar. As you know, you've got these players who are so very good in this area, but it's deserted Melbourne right now. But it can't have deserted them to the stage and point that it has. So they tried an uncontested marking game. That's what it looked like for me. They're not great kicking side, so I wonder why you do that. So, yep, he's a premiership coach, that bloke right there. He's a hero of the Melbourne Football Club. I don't care what anyone says. I know supporters get passionate about it at the moment. He's got to coach his way, and the players have got to play their way out of what is a really ugly hole they've dug.